Right, so I want to say good evening, everyone, and I'm happy that you're all able to join us today for another big debate. For those of you meeting me for the first time, my name is Ruth South, and I'm the CEO, founder of an organisation called CARE, which is an acronym for Communities Against Racism Enterprise. CARE, as some of you already know, is about we talk about reparation, which is financial. Well, this is about the reparation of the mind and the body of both those traumatized, whether they are victims or perpetrators of racism. So that's what CARE's, CARE's more than that, but that's just CARE in a nutshell. But tonight's event, it's our third in a series of 4 debates. And to be honest, right, I'm excited about this one because it's all about the youth. And to my knowledge, I don't think we've ever had a debate like this before. We've not tackled it, looking at it from an African and a Caribbean standpoint. So it's interesting how we're going to be looking at it through the lens of the youth. And I think it's about time as well. So it's good that it was a youth that asked for their platform. We didn't generate it. They heard debates 1 and debates 2, and they thought, well, we want to have a platform because we've got things to say too. So I'm really pleased that they have put themselves forward for that, which for me is a strong indication that they too want a reparation of the mind to connect with the adults and to connect in a journey that they are and we are both going on with them to do. So we're going to be looking at many topics, and we never get through these topics, right? But we're going to try our best. So, as usual, the panel will be asked a series of questions, and I want you, the audience, whether viewing, so those who are viewing, welcome. I should have welcomed you from the beginning, but welcome for whatever country you are viewing this from. So you can always put something in the chat, and maybe your question may be answered too. So I want to thank you all for coming out, because for me, you being here is telling me that this is important to you. And we want to change the narrative. We all talk about changing the narrative, but now we really want to make a change in the narrative and make a positive difference between our cultures. So we no longer want the samey status quo. We're bored, right? We're tired. Well, I am anyway. Because we know deep down we have a love for each other. But other powers that be don't want this, and I'm not talking about God. And they've put institutions in place for us to be disconnected, to be spiteful, selfish, to say mean and horrible things to each other. And you know what? We all fell for it, didn't we? Because we're here today. We have a common enemy between the Africans and the Caribbeans to keep us right where he wants us to be. But as we know, God is in control. So let's not help him further. We've given him enough mileage. So tonight, what we're going to do is to separate the myths from the facts. We're going to make sure that at the end of it all, we are going to come away from this youth meeting with something better than we came here with. So, without further ado, Sister Ruth, could you come and open this session with a word of prayer? Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Shall we pray? Most kind and righteous Father, I don't really know where to start with this prayer. As your children, we have been hurting for a long time. As young people growing up, we have not understood some things. We've had things said to us which we have taken on as gospel. We have been attacked in ways that have made us look at ourselves in a way that is not wholesome. Then we've brought these matters forward, and even though we are now grown adults, we are still struggling from the things that we have believed to be a truth, even though they are a lie. Dear Lord, a lot of us have experienced hurt, not just from outside of the church, but also inside of the church in relation to these matters, because we are broken, because we are hurting, because we need answers and we are not getting them. But we also know that your word says that the young people are the ones that are going to finish your work. So we're going to be hearing from the young people this evening. And Lord, I'm praying that you will use them to open our eyes, to help us look at some of the things that haven't been good for us, but we can learn from the experiences that they are now having. But Lord, I'm asking you to help us all to be gentle with one another, to be respectful with one another, to be kind to one another, because we're all coming from different places with different experiences, and those experiences have impacted us all in different ways. So I'm asking you to put a hedge around us now, dear Lord, as we discuss these matters. They are important, and we are in a spiritual warfare, and this is part of it, and it needs to be addressed. So Lord, as we come together now as one people, even though we don't realize sometimes we are one people, as we come together as one people, I'm asking you to open our minds, open our hearts, open our ears. And I'm just praying at the end of this session that we will be closer to getting the healing that we require. And whatever I haven't asked, dear Lord, you know what we need. So I leave it in front of you, and I just thank you for hearing me. For I ask these words in your holy and precious name. Amen.
So, Esther, could you come and introduce the councillors?
Good evening, everybody. So every time we've done a debate, I've done a little bit around the issues and how we can heal and restore each other. So this evening, I'm going to just talk about trauma. So the topic that we're talking about, Black v. Black, it's quite sensitive. Every time I come here, I say, we have to take it with caution because it will trigger people. Things will come back to your memories. But don't feel pressurized to remain here. I'm going to introduce Ruth and Ruth Thompson, who just prayed, and myself, who will be here if people want to talk and need a little bit of just time to get the difficult feelings out of our systems. Sometimes it's okay to be uncomfortable, because when we're uncomfortable, we know that something's not right, and we can do something to help ourselves. So trauma is defined as not what happened to you, it's what happened inside of you as a result of what happened to you. I'll say it again. Trauma is not what happened to you. So bad things can happen, but what happened inside of you is the impact of how you feel about a situation, whether you felt, anxious, or you felt worried or scared or fearful as a result of an incident that happened to you. But we're talking about racial trauma, and racial trauma, or race-based traumatic stress, is the cumulative effects of racism on an individual's mental and physical health. It has been linked to feelings of anxiousness, depression, and suicidal ideas, as well as other physical health issues. The lasting impact of trauma can take us from childhood right to adulthood. And the last few debates that we've been hearing how us as adults have been impacted from childhood right up until adulthood. But when it's in childhood, we call those ACEs. In my work that I do, these are called ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences. And these are stressful events that children may experience growing up that have been shown to impact on their mental and physical health. Children experiencing ACEs are 32 times more likely to be labelled with behavioural or cognitive problems, like they're too rude, they're too bad, and whatever, but people don't know what's going on inside of them. And sometimes we don't see the impact of these traumas, whether it's bullying, whether sometimes it can come from home, from church, from our community, the teasing that we do of each other, the put-downs, the snide remarks, those hurtful words. You know, we can have words that are hurtful as much as physical hurts. But tonight we want to help our children to understand what's actually going on inside of them. So as we ask the questions, they'll be sharing their experience. Take time with them. You know, it's important that we support them in answering the questions. But it's also a learning opportunity for us as adults, because we don't realize the impact of the effects of trauma on our children. So that's one of the reasons why they were saying, like Ruth said, we've got something to say, we want to talk about it. And that warmed my heart, because Ruth and I will, and those who are involved in counselling and therapy, we know that talking is a way of helping us to relieve the tension that's within us. And so this evening, as I hand over to Clavis and Adrian, again, I said, if there's any time you feel uncomfortable or troubled, then please speak to myself and Ruth. Just give us a wave or touch us or something, because we do know that whether it's in church, in our community, at home, or at school, or in our places of work or education, trauma can trigger us, but sometimes we don't have anywhere to go with it. And that's the reason why we decided to do these debates, because we realized there was an issue that was arising that people were too scared or uncomfortable to talk about, that was impacting on us. So thank you once again. And I'm Esther Douglas. I am the co-founder of CARE with my sister, but I'm also the leader of the community services for this church. And so on behalf of Advent Community Services and Wolverhampton Central, we welcome you all this evening. Over to Adrian and Clavis, who will be our hosts for the evening. Thank you.
Oh, thanks very much, Esther. Good evening, everyone. Esther was talking about things that happen in childhood. And I remember, to this day, I was at school, in junior school. I remember the rhyme. I was the only black kid in the white school, and my brother was the only one in the infant school. I remember the rhyme. Wagga-matta, browned off, nigger mine, go black home. You'll be all white in the morning. Eat some coon flakes. I remember the rhyme, and there was no one to talk to. I remember internalising it. I was 9 years old, and I remember how I felt. And when I came here, I was 18, and I came here to study, and I was at the lecture theatre at New Cross Hospital, and the pathologist came in and was doing a lecture about some diseases or something. And I remember, again, I'm the only black person in the class, the lecture theatre, and they said, and quite frankly, this disease is like a nigger in a woodpile. And they all looked round at me and everything, so, you know, people were laughing and stuff like that. And again, internalising. But it was obvious, you know, it's not a surprise. You expect that from certain sections of society. But since we've had these debates, something more subtle has happened. When Danny Reid was here, he spoke about something that was generational, but it was more subtle. He said that he went to a camp meeting, and it's a church camp meeting. These people who I dealt with, they weren't church people, they were from the outside. But he said when the kids were playing, the youth were playing, there was games inside, and it was Afro-Caribbeans on the inside, an outside, and no one had directed them to be, there was the African children, those of direct African descent were playing outside. And he wondered why that had happened. And this evening, a sister said to me that she came here one time and she said to a brother here, she said, "What part of Africa are you from?" And "I don't come from Africa. I'm from Jamaica." And she said he was really offended that she should think he was African. So the things that I experienced years ago were kind of more obvious, but this is very uncomfortable because on the outside, generally, we look the same. And yet there's some unspoken thing between us. And this is what we've looked at in the two debates, but they've been to do with, adults. But now we're going to look at the younger people because they are the ones who are going to come up in society and they are going to run things. So that's what we're going to look at. So Clavis is the main host for this evening, and we're going to do the questions here. So he's going to come up and tell you something about the rules and everything.
Brilliant. How's everyone doing? I need you guys to be a bit louder than that. How's everyone doing? Thank you so much for allowing me to come here and host this debate show. I think it's really important to be able to open these kinds of conversations. So just a bit of an introduction. My name is Clavis. I'm a 23-year-old master's student at Coventry, studying virtual and augmented reality. I'm also bassist at my church. I'm of Congolese descent, so I was actually born in Congo, and I came to this country when I was, I think, 3 or 4. My parents would know better. And I'm just happy to be here to be able to talk about these, generational tensions that have been happening. And you realize that it didn't start with us. And it's something that's been happening for so long, and it's still continuing at our age and a lot of things that we've experienced. So it's been good to be able to be here and be able to hash out a lot of these conversations. So just going through a lot of the rules today. So we're going to be having this debate, and to be able to, if anyone from the audience wants to be able to speak, all you just need to do is just raise your hand. Everyone just raise your hand. Just like that. Just like that. So you just need to be able to raise your hand. I will pick you out, and you just come to this mic right here to be able to talk. Generally, I would want people to speak for about 2 minutes because we want to be able to get through a lot of these topics. And we're going to have our panelists. So the panelists are going to be priority, and they're going to be able to obviously speak a lot more. But I really want this to be a very engaging conversation with everyone. So engage, and yeah, I think it's going to be good. And hopefully no one gets triggered. But yeah, it's going to be good. Is everyone ready? Is everyone ready? Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
There's one other thing that Travis didn't explain. We've got a Mentimeter, which would be allowing you to vote, or not vote, but give your opinions via your mobile phone. So some of you might know another method where you just log on to the screen. You'll have a code to put in your phone. It will allow you to take part in the debate, so you can make comments on the questions, throw your opinions on there. So the Mentimeter is really crucial, that if you don't feel confident to come to the front, you can then use your phone to be part of the debate too. Is that okay? Great. Can the panelists come to the front, those young people that are taking part? Travis has introduced himself already. Our other host is Lighter. Lighter, do you want to stand up or just raise your hand? Lighter and Travis are siblings. Chavi. I keep calling you Travis. I'm so sorry.
I get it all the
It's
time.
my age. I'm sorry.
Don't worry.
Get to 20 and you become like this. Lighter and Chow.
Clavis. You get used to
I
it.
know. I just, you know what? Let's just move on, yeah, because I'm not right today.
Is it because he's African?
I'm not even going to answer that. So, Lighter, move on to you, shall we? Ignore Adrian. We know that you're one of 8 siblings. You sing solo, stroke, R&B, Afro, swing artists. And you're also part of House Worship. And House Worship, we know, are going to be supporting William McDowell in a few weeks' time, yeah? Which is brilliant, 2 weeks' time. You're also a church choir leader. And you're a writer. And you're striving to be at your optimum height in your career in both. So that sounds brilliant. You love makeup and fashion and hair. You're really into skincare and you pride yourself to making yourself the best possible person you can be. So, and apparently you said that the best thing you like to do is sleep. That's worrying. Okay, so we'll move on to our other host who isn't as young as Clavis and Lighter. We have Adrian Roberts, who really isn't young. He's a trained physiotherapist. He's a national speaker. He sings. He's a man of God. Many of you will have seen him on this pulpit and other places. Adrian is extremely talented, and he's a friend to most of us in this room. So we're grateful, Adrian, that you're here again to support this event. Now to our panellists, we're wondering whether you can introduce yourselves to the audience.
Hi, my name's Shakania. I am. Do we do the sentence? So, while I identify as British, I am of Jamaican heritage. For my day job, I'm a Senko, and I have been coming. Well, I came to the last debate, and I found it super interesting. So I'm interested and excited to sit through. Oh, what is a Senko? So Senko stands for Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Coordinator. It's just, as you can see, it's a mouthful, so we just shorten it to Senko. And so I basically, I coordinate the provision for children with special needs in school. So anybody that will come in from the NHS or anyone who needs to come in and observe children, that they come through me. I'm helping with the diagnosis process, and it's all that fun stuff. So that's what I do on a normal day. But back to the debate, I'm excited for how this will develop.
Hello. I'm Jabari. I'm a sound engineer and a music producer. I was born in the parish of Wolverhampton. It's a bit far away from Jamaica, but it's still there. I'm 21 years old, and yeah, I'm a sound engineer. I work alongside Clavis and Light as a part of House Worship as well. So hopefully you guys can keep supporting us as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kiki. I was born in Birmingham, but I have Zimbabwean heritage. I'm 13 years old, and I'm really happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Sinead Lamini, and I'm also classified as a British, but I'm half South African and half Zimbabwean. Yeah, and I'm 16 years old, writing my GCSEs in a few months. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Henrietta. I'm 30 years old. Just recently became a mum as well. First time. I am originally from Rwanda. That's where I was born, and moved here to this country at the age of 8 years old. Professionally, I am a diagnostic radiographer, so I work in radiology.
And she's going to sing for us.
Brilliant. So, continue. All right, brilliant. So, pleased to meet all the panelists, and I think we're going to get a move on. I think I want everyone to very much take part in this and just be as communicative and understanding as possible with a lot of these questions and that are coming up. So we're going to split the questions in 3 sections. So we're going to first off start by talking about history, and after that we're going to start talking about culture, and then we're going to talk about relationships, and let's find it again. And then the last section, pardon? Yeah, we'll be talking about relationships and parental influences. So we're going to pretty much start with should we start with the first question with the first topic? Should we start? Brilliant. We're going to start with the first topic. So panelists, are you ready? All right, good. So we're going to ask the first question. So the first question is, based on history, how much do you know about your history as a black person? I'm going to repeat the question, and I'm going to allow everyone else to think about that as well. So, how much do you think you know about your history as a black person? So we've got a poll up there. So the panelists, I'm gonna choose. I'm still trying to get familiar with the names. I'm gonna choose Shakanya, was it? Brilliant. I'm getting good at this. I'm gonna choose Shakanya.
How much do I know about my history and what was learnt from school or from home?
Yeah.
I would say that what I do know is definitely taught from home.
100.
Not necessarily from school. I think what I've learnt from school and education and just being out living life in society has put a different spin to what I have learnt from home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. No problem. Jabari?
I'd say a lot of it was from home, but I learned a lot from school, but I use what I learned from home to fill in the blanks that I learned at school. So anything that I got taught at school, obviously when you think with common sense, you would realise that there's bits missing. So anything my mom or my dad or my grandparents would teach me, you could easily just fill in the blanks of the history that I know personally. I wouldn't say I know a lot, but I know up to a certain point. But then a part of it, because obviously from Jamaica, there's a certain point where it just gets a bit muddled up, where you can kind of guess where, I don't know, my heritage or how my heritage or my culture comes from. I could have a guess based on the history, on the filling of blanks that I got from either researching myself or my parents. But I would say I know a lot, but not the whole story.
Okay. So, Kiki, I would ask you, based on this question, do you know a lot about your history or your heritage? Do you know a lot about it?
I know one or two things.
One or two things?
Yeah.
Okay, so give me some things that you probably know also. Or would you like to know a lot more about your history?
Yeah, I'd like to know a lot more.
Okay, so that's interesting to me, because this question very much asks how much do you actually know, more so than, where have you learned about your history in the home or in school. I would very much want to know the information about your heritage. So me being Congolese, for example, how much do I actually know about it? So I'm going to ask you, for example, how much do you actually know about your history?
I would say it's like Jabari, quite limited in that I think in Caribbean culture, not that, the way that I look at it is that we're not that far out of slavery. And so when it comes to our grandparents and parents before them, it's probably not, it goes back to the trauma. They probably don't want to share that kind of information with us.
Okay.
A lot of our grandparents will have had children out of wedlock, which would paint the wrong idea for their children to go forward. So they kind of, they want to teach us in the best way possible, but they want to keep certain bits about their background away from us so that we're on the straight and narrow. So I think by default, we only get part of a story. And then I don't feel like we're always from and I speak about Caribbeans on this one, we're not from a completely storytelling. No, we like to tell stories, but we don't always, tell the whole story.
Yeah.
We're not historical storytellers like that.
And so our history only goes back a couple of generations, if that. and then we just don't get the full picture. So when it comes to my white counterparts, they can tell me, well, great grandma was in the war, and and they were the ancestors of this, and I don't have that. I can literally go back to grandma. That's it.
Yeah.
So not very much.
I'd say other panelists, Henrietta, and so do you guys have other opinions?
I spent like 14 years in Zimbabwe.
Wow.
Yeah, and so basically in school, there's a subject history, and it's all about like Zimbabwean history.
Yeah.
So we learned that who colonized, we know that the British colony, they colonized us as Zimbabweans. And compared to like Shekinah, sorry if I pronounced it wrong, our grandmothers and grandfathers, they cut to the chase. They don't they tell the whole story, so compared to them, yeah. So I know everything in my Zimbabwean side, yeah.
Henrietta?
For me, I would say it depends on who tells you that information and what interest they have in telling it to you. Because personally, being from Rwanda, my parents did tell me the history of what happened in our country.
Yeah.
It's something that is well documented. There are documentaries about it. There are movies about it. A lot of the times when people used to ask me, where are you from? And I'd say Rwanda, they'd be like, oh, I think I've watched that movie called Hotel Rwanda. And that was always associated with, oh, is it this or that happened in your country? So I think that it depends on who tells you and what interest they have, because the issue that was in my country was tribalism. So it depends on what perspective that person or what side that person took. So obviously for me, it depends on what my parents told me. But from what they told me and from what I saw in documentaries and from when I went and visited the country myself, I was able to learn a pretty good depth of what the history was in Rwanda.
So with regards to this question, just I would ask, and I'm opening this up to the audience as well. Does it seem that our Africans, do they pass down information a lot easier than Caribbeans do? With regards to, because there's a problem with, for example, I have limited knowledge on my, on my culture or my heritage, and for some African people, it's more so that, this is, I was born there and I spent 14 years and I do know a lot about it. But, so the question I would ask is there a problem with the passing down of information?
I wouldn't say there's a problem with the passing down of the information. I would say you're closer to the information.
Okay.
Like, you are from Africa. I'm from Jamaica. That was people taken from Africa. So half of my story is missing. It's lost. So I could tell you I'm from Jamaica, and I could tell you all the history from my grandparents and their parents, because they told me, because they're from Jamaica, so they could tell me where it's from Jamaica. But because you're from Zimbabwe or you're from Congo, you're from that country, so you're more tied to the land because you're from there. That once you've been taken away and been stripped of who you are, that whole part of you's gone. So it's not that we struggle with passing down the history. We thrive in telling the history that we know. We struggle in telling the history that we don't know. But because you're from there, your wealth of knowledge is richer than ours.
Right.
So it's not about do they know more. It's about you're from there.
100%. We're gonna give Jabari a clap. That was a good answer. Oh no. Sorry. So I want to put it to the youth and the audience as well. Youth, does anybody have anything that they want to kind of contribute to what's been said and to this question? Anybody? Any youth at all? Sorry. Okay, no problem. Sorry, what's your name? Sorry? Alvina, if you could go to that mic there. Brilliant. Sorry, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to comment on the point of the history, how the Caribbean one is disjointed or disconnected as compared to the African. Yeah, it's very good, young people, you're doing well. I like how you're bringing everything across. The big question is, we need to, as we come together, to ask ourselves who is behind. Who? We are not fighting, but that's a very penitent question. Because the pain that the Caribbean descendants are having is the same pain. While we may be connected, like Zinete said, she knows most of her history. I can tell you it's very distorted. I don't know even half of my history. What is documented, what I learned at school, is not even half the truth. Because there's an element that Henrietta also brought of tribalism as well. So we have a lot of schisms that we are carrying, the trauma that we have. There's tribalism, there's racism, there's blackicism as well, that we are here today because we have a problem. So there's the history. Somebody wrote our history, but I hope by coming together here, we rise and write our own history. Because that history which is documented is wrong. Yes. So we are talking about decolonizing education. And I hope we get to the point where we recognize that even religion, at some point we may have to question some things and possibly rise and decolonize it. We are talking about decolonization and slavery. So who is behind?
100%.
Thank you.
100%. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry, so what's your name, sorry?
Hi, my name is Wayne.
Brilliant, brilliant. So yeah, what's your take on this question?
I like Jabari's answer. Talking about, he kind of, when he was answering though, I was thinking about the idea that we always kind of want to bring Caribbean history like back to somewhere in Africa. And because we can't put Caribbean history somewhere in Africa, it's like we have a problem in our mind with that. But if someone is from Africa, yeah, they're from, say they're from Zimbabwe or they're from Congo or wherever they're from, it doesn't mean that their ancestors were always from that specific country. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that they're going to be like, none of them are going to think or worry about the idea that, oh, my history is lost or disjointed or whatever. Yeah, Caribbeans, we have a wealth of history in the Caribbean. Being in the Caribbean is, you know, our identity. We are Caribbean. We sing, as a Jamaican, we sing Jamaica Land We Love. You know, we don't feel like we don't know who we are as Jamaicans. I mean, I know I look over in America and I see how the Americans, they just feel separate. They don't even refer themselves as Americans. They're African Americans. You see, Jamaicans are proud. We are Jamaicans. You know what I mean? Personally, when it comes onto things like trying to dig up our history, and we've got these tools that we've been given to look at our history through the lens of, I'll call it the powers that be. Things like Black History Month. I personally don't like what they've done with the thing. I think it's been completely evil. It's been put in there to kind of, I don't know if you know this comedian, what's his name? Eddie Griffin.
Yeah.
He said, black people are fine until they start showing the movies like Roots and these things, and we suddenly wanted to kill every white person out there.
So sorry to cut you, but are you disagreeing with the fact that, you know, because she stated earlier that there is a limited amount of... So, I'm sorry, what's your name? Shikani, no problem. So are you disagreeing with the fact that Shikani said that there is a problem with passing down? Well, there's a limited information that, you know, that gets passed down due to, you know, factors of, you know, trauma, or there is information that gets passed down, but it's almost like half information, pretty much. Are you disagreeing with that?
No, I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm saying that the answer I was focusing more on Jabari's, that was the last one I heard. Mm-hmm. That the idea of putting it back in Africa itself, like, why are we so focused on doing that? I mean, like, we know that, okay, as black people, yeah, it's likely that our ancestors came from Africa.
Yeah.
But we want to pinpoint to say, because we can't find a specific place in Africa, we've lost our identity.
Yeah. 100%. Thank you very much. Sorry, say yeah? So what's your name, sorry?
My name is Charles. Sorry. Sorry, I've just looked at the stats for this question that was asked, and we have always been reliant on books. A lot of us, like for example, I had to study for my GCSEs history, and one of my favorite stories. Now I'm saying story because I think we need to be very careful with regards to what we understand of our history. Sometimes it's dependent on who's written it. If we're taking it from the contextual aspect of having gotten it from literature.
100.
So if I was to tell you that one of the books that I enjoyed reading, I can't even remember the author, it mentioned that I am Zimbabwean.
Yeah.
That these great settlers came, I think the gentleman was named Cecil John Rhodes. He's got lots of roads that are named after him here, back home. And it mentioned that he did a lot. So when he came, apparently he struck a deal with one of our greatest leaders, where for, was it a bag of sugar?
Yeah.
He signed over some land rights with a big X. Apparently because he was illiterate, he had to sign with a big X to say that he had brokered a deal to sign over a vast majority of land. Now, bear in mind, we didn't have borders. Our heritage, especially for African, we didn't have borders. So to hear that, not only did he do this great thing, he was also part of an expedition that discovered what called the Victoria Falls. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that. And the questions that began to rise in my head was, how do you discover something where people are already there? And then the next thing is they would also mention in the book there was quotes like they had to clear out savages. So in my context, I would also call those people that were being cleared out because the land had been signed over savages. Then I realized, hang on. These are my people that are being described as not only savages, but as though we are uncivilized, because they usually use the words uncivilized. So if we're talking about trauma, this is not just a Caribbean thing. A lot of us, you know, they always say that we have tribalism back home. I can tell you from my heritage that my family, where they ended up settling, even though I am mainly of Shona heritage, but I'm also Ndebele, they were displaced because apparently the land rights that they had signed consisted of the majority of the country. So we were displaced from this arable, brilliant land to this settlement in the middle of nowhere where we knew nothing about. And this happened countrywide. Why is this important? They took away our knowledge of this. In other words, how they managed this is they moved everybody from their heritage, from where they grew up, and then they had to start from point zero, just like how the Caribbeans have done so. And so it's very important to understand that when it comes to history, it's all dependent on where it starts from, because the majority of people where they live or where they grew up isn't exactly what we call home. And so that is a very big issue with regards to who wrote the history and what we understand that we're giving our children.
Thank you very much. Give him a round of applause, please. So we're just gonna get to another question now. No problem.
Hi everyone, just quickly. Oh, too high for me. Just when you're giving your answers and you're discussing your points, just keep it concise. We've got a 2-minute timer, just that we're able to get through the points as quickly as possible.
Brilliant. So we're just gonna get to the next question. So the next question is, how much of what you know about your history was learned at school? How much was outside of school? So it's on the screen. So, sorry? Sorry?
I think a majority of people had it.
Yeah, so it was on the screen already for like a while now. Yeah, so basically we're
I don't have
able
my glasses, so bear with me.
Yeah, you can't see anything, can you?
No.
Majority of people learn their history from home and not school. I mean, an observation that I was thinking of sitting here is when you are in school, you learn more about white history, English history, British history. You don't really learn much about your own. So I think that we're conditioned to, let's say if you're in this country, you're British, you must learn how to be a British citizen. So I think that that's one of the main reasons that I've thought of as to why people don't really learn much about where they're from school. Yeah, and I think that if you're privileged to learn information from home, then yeah, harness that.
And I'm just going to open that question to the more sort of young people on the panel. So I'm going to start with Kiki to answer that question for us.
I think all of it is from home.
Yeah.
Because at school, like as she was saying, it's mostly white history.
Yeah.
Like Vikings and stuff. So yeah.
Sorry, what was your name again? Sorry.
Zineid.
Zineid. No problem. So what's your take on this question?
Yeah, I think it is like, even when it's Black History Month, my school, they have like a way of even making it back to white history.
Yeah.
When they're doing assemblies.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, so it's home. But in Zimbabwe, back home, it's both school and home.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in this country, it's only like in home only.
So with that being said, it gets to the next question, which I want to ask on here. So if at home, how were you taught about your cultural history and how did they do it? So examples, were you taught to be proud of your heritage? And were you taught anything about different skin shades and different cultures underneath the same skin shade as well?
I do want to say, though, going back to that one and then answer this one, I think what do we expect, though, to be taught? We're in a white country with a white king full of white people.
Yeah.
So I don't expect to be taught anything about Jamaican history or Zimbabwean history. But if I went to Jamaica, I bet you I know plenty about Marcus Garvey and all these people.
Yeah.
So I don't expect to go to school to learn anything about Black history. I couldn't care less if it was Black History Month. I'm in a white school. You're going to teach me the white perspective of what you think Black History Month should be. So I'm not going in there. I feel like if we come from home, your parents or whoever should tell you, go in there with the mindset knowing you're in a white country, so don't expect to learn from a white man how to pick ackee from a tree.
But with that being said, we are although there is a racial disparity of Black people to white people from where we're from, when we go to these schools, they are multicultural as well. So wouldn't we expect as well to learn about our own history so that we can also be represented just as much as white people as well?
I would say no.
Why? So yeah, Henry.
Zineid says she's from Zimbabwe, and at school you learn majority stuff about Zimbabwean culture, right? In your history lessons. Okay, I'm in England. I'm only going to learn about English history because I'm in England.
But
I don't expect to be taught, because I'm in a multicultural school, just because our parents came over here just doesn't necessarily mean that we should then change what is taught in the curriculum. Yes, there should be aspects of that because we are, yes, in a multicultural society in England, but it shouldn't necessarily be changed because we're in a white country. If I go to Jamaica, I'm going to be taught about Jamaican history and Jamaican culture. If I go to Congo, it's the same thing because I'm in a majority Congolese culture, or I'm in a majority Zimbabwean, or majority Nigerian, or Trinidad, or whatever. So you go there expecting to know all about that.
Okay, I'm gonna let you have your take on it.
So I think what you're saying is,
and Henrietta, you're next as well.
I hear what you're saying, and there is an element of the expectation. We are in a British country, and part of the curriculum, or part of the national curriculum, is British values. So, like you said, we can't be expecting to be taught a true history of our background in this country. What I will say, though, is now that the education system is moving towards privatisation and academies, schools do have more ownership on the spin that they put on the national curriculum. So, for example, Harper Bell. I don't work at Harper Bell, but I do hear Harper Bell's name through many conversations. In that their curriculum is very, very culturally rich because of the demographic of their children.
Does everyone know what Harper Bell is as well?
Harper Bell. Does anyone not know what Harper Bell is or where Harper Bell is? Harper Bell is the primary school church for the primary school for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Sorry, and it's what? It's in Birmingham. Very important. It's in Birmingham. So I hear a lot in educational circles about the curriculum at Harper Bell, in that it's very culturally rich. They do celebrate black heritage. They do teach black culture, and it's appropriate for the children that go there. So while I agree in that the expectation can't be status quo, you should teach every black person about their personal black history.
Brilliant.
That's not how that works. We are in England. That said, if you want that to be taught at school, you're going to have to look at the school's curriculum and how they teach that to your child.
Brilliant.
Also, teach the heritage at home,
Yeah.
because that's where they're going to get it in the truest form.
So I'm just going to get a perspective from Henrietta as well.
Yeah, just echoing from what she's saying, because she mentioned some of the things I was going to say. Africa is a very big continent with many countries, and I'm sure the Caribbean has many islands as well.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
many of them are we expecting them to cover in 1 month?
Yeah.
It's not going to be possible, especially considering we're in a British country.
Yeah.
So I think the heavier burden does fall on the education at home.
Yeah.
For us to teach our children their specific history.
Yeah.
For my daughter, for example, her dad is from Nigeria. I'm from Rwanda.
Yeah, yeah.
So even within that bracket, she has to receive an education about both the histories from my country and her country.
Yeah.
So considering how large and how diverse Africa and the Caribbean is, I think the heavier burden should fall on the parents at home.
So everything at home makes sense. So I think Brother Garfield's going to say something as well. No problem.
I was just going to say, in terms of for the schools and the issue in the schools that...
Speak up, turn them on.
Yes, it is now, sorry. That, what can they really teach us in the schools other than, you know, Zunaid said they will teach you the history from the white perspective, the British perspective, but they can't attach it to our history of the Caribbean or African too much, because then it'd be too much trauma for them.
Yeah.
For the barbaric, the colonization, you know, all of those things that would traumatize them. So last time when I was here, I was talking about what we do with difficult feelings. They're going to suppress it,
yeah,
or they're going to deflect it,
yeah,
and so make the history wishy-washy, or all the dancing and the singing bits of it, because that's the bits that they can cope with. So we can't, so when we're thinking about home and school being taught, we have to teach our children, because the schools can't cope, the teachers can't cope. Rufen and I went to, and got quickly, to the, what school is it? The grammar school.
Yeah.
And we did an assembly for them with the wreath, because they could cope with the wreath. But then Rufen did an exercise, and she showed them all these pictures of famous people, black people, and they could tell us, yes, that's Kanye, that's Beyonce, that's this and that. And then she showed a picture of slaves, and everybody went quiet. She said, do you know these people? And not one person said a word. And somebody said, I think that's Harriet Tubman. And and we was just laughing, because the pictures of slaves, traumatized them. And they were, so that's what I would say.
With that, Auntie Douglas, why should we always, this is something I've been taught to do, sorry guys. So with that, why should we always accommodate the colonizers' trauma? Like, what about our trauma as well?
Yeah, we should, but the way that we have to do it, we have to take them on a journey.
Yeah.
As much, because if you know that you're brutal, you're a rapist, you're a thief, you're this and that, who's gonna murderer, who, you know, all the abhorrent things that they're doing, like hanging people, branding people, selling people, things like that, they're not gonna, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
So as you can see, it is coming into the curriculum more and more, but look how many years it's taken.
Yeah.
So it's like they're having to be kind of palatable, because they are the majority in this country, and they're going to decide how much they're going to let our children hear about who they really are.
Okay, so we're going to swiftly move on to Brother Garfield. So 2 minutes, please, 2 minutes.
Yeah. We're going to put a timer on.
That's all right, I won't need it. In regards to, I was listening to this young lady here about, hearing from Zimbabwe and where she lives. But it wasn't until I actually went to Zimbabwe. We have Africans in our church, okay? And it wasn't until I actually went to Zimbabwe and Ghana that I actually learned about the country itself. But yet we got the same people in our churches. So even in the church, our African brothers and sisters aren't actually speaking up and telling us what, to help, as a gentleman said, sorry, it's not gentleman, youth, said about filling in the gaps. So even in church, there is that mismatch. There is a time where we're not even getting to know each other, in our own histories, because we look at each other and everybody thinks everybody's a Jamaican. And even in the Caribbean, the Caribbean again, even within the people from Trinidad and also the other islands in the Caribbean, if you ask them where you're from, the first thing they will say, I'm from the Caribbean. But if you ask a Jamaican where you're from, was from Jamaica. Caribbean's a sea, you guys ain't mermaids. But anyway, but what I'm saying is, what you have as countries and you know about yourselves, start first within your church. Because if you can't share, families, this is a family. So you say about sharing within your family, share your histories, share your experiences, share about your country in your church, and let that be the start. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me?
No, should be on now still.
1, 2, brilliant. I don't mind shouting. I think something I kind of want to highlight before we move on to the next question is a massive problem which I've had about, talking about, teaching our history is I've always thought to myself, our history isn't just trauma. And why is it we constantly, when we're talking about, getting taught about our history, whether it's at school, whether it's at home, it's always about talking about what we went through. Always talking about pain, always talking about, like, our black history and the black experience is so much more than slavery. It's so much more than pain. And I think it's more so about when we are actually, like, if I say to someone, okay, we're going to talk to you about black history, or say that to a random person, the first thing they're going to say is, I'm sorry about slavery. I'm sorry about everything that you, like, we are so much, there's so much to the black experience, and there's a lot more beauty to being Caribbean, to being African, than just the pain. And I think when we're talking about passing down information, let's also learn to pass down the beauty as well. And in fact, let's prioritize the beauty a lot more, which is something I wanted to add as well. Sorry. So yeah, 1 minute on the clock.
Okay. So why is it important to learn about our own history? I hate the question. I'll just talk my story. In 1992, my father lost his job. I was 12 years old. My family status changed. We suffered, but thankfully we were able to attend school to the end. Until when I got here, in 2020, when I was starting doing my studies, that's when it made sense to me why my dad lost his job. Why my family and so many millions in Zimbabwe suffered. Because I was studying, I discovered that it was the institutions, the world institutions, the IMF, the World Bank. They had introduced these neoliberal policies, claiming to revamp the economy of Zimbabwe, which was fantastic. But unfortunately, those policies, they brought the economy to its knees to this day. Just imagine, this is 2020, lockdown. I'm stuck in my shed studying, and I'm discovering these truths. I'm connecting the dots. So this is the reason why my dad lost his job. He used to be a mechanic for the government. That was meant to be a safe job, but he lost it. And I'm reading these articles. It's the IMF, it's the World Bank. And this is 30 years on. Nothing has changed. I was angry. This is the reason why this debate has come to where we are today. It is the world institutions. I am a mother. I have 2 boys. I worry about their future. I worry about the legacy I'm going to leave to my children. I can't go back to Africa like that and get a piece of land easily. There are borders. There is tribalism planted by the enemy, the colonizers. It's still there. My children are not acceptable in Africa. Here in England, they are struggling. I am a mother. I need to leave a legacy for my children. But where do I start?
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
We're just going to round up. Thank you very much.
I'm angry.
Thank you very much. No understanding. Brilliant. So we're just going to swiftly move on to the next question, and we're going to bring it back to the panelists.
Oh, go on, just because she was waiting.
Sorry?
She was waiting a while.
All right, no problem.
Go on quickly. It'll be
Just because Auntie Douglas.
No. It'll be less than a minute.
No
No, I
problem.
just wanted to make 2 positives. I think going back to Jabari's point in regards to school, I think it depends on what school you went to. I think I was me and Kareem were blessed enough to go to King's, and I think for us, we was able to, the teachers were open enough to ask us questions, to learn about our cultures, and therefore celebrate the different cultures.
Same.
So yeah, there were more black teachers, there were, and teachers from other cultures, but they were embraced. And then even the white teachers, especially RE teachers, I can't remember their names, were more open to learn than therefore taught the class. So I think it depends on the school. And then secondly, in regards to the gentleman's point in regards to learning at church, I think I was blessed enough to, when going to Brother Douglas's concerts and when Auntie Anna put on programs, when Auntie Chelsea put on programs, you know, back in the day and even till recently, I learned more about my culture here. So I think, we can continue to learn, and I think it is a very good thing. We need to continue to do that, but my own experience, that's what I had, so just 2 positives.
I can agree with that because I went to King's as well, so yeah. Brilliant. So, pardon? So, we're just gonna swiftly move on to the next question. That's okay. Brilliant. Probably, I'll just give you the mic.
My apologies. My question is on the history, because we're struggling with black versus black. And so my question is, why is it important for us to know each individual person's history? And how is that splitting us? And if we know that history, is that the reason why we are split? Because I've been told I've been sold by his ancestors, and therefore he's still angry because they're struggling because my ancestors sold me. So when we are addressing the history, do we perpetuate this slavery history, or is it time to drop it? If we're going to continue with the history and its accuracy on who sold who and who, where does the trauma stop? When does the reparation start? And when does the healing start? Now, I'll tell you one deliberate thing I did. My daughters don't have any trauma from apartheid. We experienced apartheid from South African, from white people. But I've never passed my history to my daughters because that's not their history to live. They don't have any experience of apartheid or being discriminated by the whites because that's not for them to experience. But now if I'm going to pass my experience with the white people to my children to hate the whites and the opposite on and on, when does it stop?
That was a brilliant point. That was great. So we're going to move on to the next question, and I'm going to bring it right back to the panelists. So the next question, I'm going to go to question 4, actually. We're going to. If at home, how were you taught about your cultural history? How did they do it? E.g., were you taught to be proud of your heritage? And were you taught anything about different skin shades and different cultures underneath the same skin shade? Should I repeat the question again? Okay. If at home, how were you taught about your cultural history and how did they do it? So I'm going to choose Henrietta. If you can answer this for us. So essentially, in what context were you taught about your history?
I think, I think going on from what Mr. Ngube said, I think sometimes parents pass on their negative experiences onto their children. And I think sometimes as well, from what I can recollect, even when it comes to, for example, like your hair or your skin color, sometimes your parents will perpetuate the idea that lighter skin is more beautiful because that was the beauty standard when they were young. When it comes to hair, straighter hair was, more appealing, more beautiful. So it depends on how your parents came out of that. And for me, I think that I caught the negative end of that, especially when it came to perhaps like appearance when it comes to your hair and that kind of thing, because that's the way the beauty standards were when they were, in their early 20s and so on and so forth. So I think it depends on the experiences of your parents and how they came out of that.
So you think that parents should very much, parents also in your context, should have taken accountability with regards to they were just projecting their traumas and onto you.
Yeah. So I think in this day and age, bringing it to a positive perspective. In this day and age, a lot of us have seen that the market for black natural hair has really grown. When it comes to skin color, there is a lot more representation. So I think that we really should take from that. And when it comes to teaching our children as well, we really need to project those positive aspects that have really become a lot more accepted in society these days. And I think it's something that the older generation are now coming to accept and learn and heal from when they see that these attributes were never negative things. It's because they were projected onto them by people who were, taught those standards.
I'm going to throw the question at Zainaid and also Kiki. So for you to answer, so Zainaid, if at home, how were you taught about your cultural history and how did your parents do it?
My grandparents, they told me about what they went through. For example, like Gugura Wunde, the war between Shonas and Debeles in Zimbabwe. But I feel like it's not a negative thing that they are telling us that because that's what they went through. And it doesn't mean that they are being negative to us. But according to like how I look, my skin color and my hair, they encourage me to be proud of it. So it's only about the history that they told me negative. But for me, they told me to be proud of myself and how I look and my skin color and stuff like that.
Kiki, how about you? So if at home, how were you taught about your cultural history and how did they do it?
I was taught by my parents and their parents' parents their history. Like, for example, but there was a war. This was before I forget that. It's like what happened between, like how they were growing up, how they would like live, like grow up, and that's basically the history, their history. And like I was told to be proud of myself for who I am.
Brilliant. Give a round of applause. So how about you, Jabari?
I keep hearing people just like ringing up negative. Listen, my family and like church, they taught me so much about like Jamaican culture or African culture, whatever, from the brown Nazi stories to playing, I don't know, oats or something like that. Like, there's so much history in the little nursery rounds that they'd sing. Like, there's so much history and happiness in what my parents taught me, rather than like, I was brought from.
You sing a nursery rhyme.
I'm not going to do that to you. I don't want to hurt your ears, but. Like there's like even my grandma telling me how she went to the market and that how fun that was for her, or even how bad it was for her because she didn't like walking that far. Like all those type of stories there you can hear the happiness from what they would, from their history or what they lived, And that's how I was taught, through the playing the games, through the nursery rhymes, through the stories. I even how their parents did such and such things, like the little traditions that they do in their own houses. Like the way I was taught was through my grandparents telling me stories, my mum and dad telling me stories about what my grandparents told me as well, coming to church, and when we have socials, I'm playing these games, and I'm like, where do you get these games from? Oh, take from Jamaica, come over here, and whatever. Like, that there's the stories that they taught me and how I was taught was for the happiness rather than the negativeness. Yeah.
So just gonna bounce off that. So do you think it's like what I was saying earlier? So do you think we should prioritize when talking about how we're telling this information? Should we prioritize telling the more so the beautiful side of our history and of our culture a lot more?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what we should. Just any culture and any country, whatever, like the richness of your culture is the happiest parts. So if that's not passed down to you enough, then you're only going to focus on the negative parts.
So are you disagreeing with what Uncle Hill was saying then, in terms of like you shouldn't be able? So because his point was like I shouldn't have to tell my children about the trauma that I went through at all. So
no, I think it's. I think you need to hear about it, yes, but that shouldn't be the story that you pass on. Like, yes.
How does that make sense?
So you can tell me, yes, this is what happened in history in a history lesson, but I can teach you by showing you the happiest parts of my culture. So my grandparents and coming to church, they show me the happiest parts of their culture by playing the game. So that's how I understood and how that was passed on to me. Like, say if I go to when I come over to you guys, when I come to you guys' house and you see your Congolese culture, you show me the happiest parts of your culture when you guys are dancing, the way you cook, and the way you do this, etc. Like that. You show me and you show me and it helps me understand what your culture is. But you can tell me the history of that's happened, but you show me your experiences.
So in terms of like we prioritize the beauty about it. Okay, brilliant. So I'm gonna get to you. So, what's your take on this?
I wouldn't say that I was taught particularly neatly about my culture.
Right.
Like Jabari was saying, I learnt my culture from socialization and community and church, and that's how I knew what my heritage was. Going back to socials, playing oats, playing relays. The types of food that we have when you taste different. You taste other grandma's foods, you taste auntie's foods. There's just it's a melting pot, and then to add to that, African tradition as well. Like Jabari was saying, I remember because I'm traditionally from Handsworth Church, I remember there was a certain time where we had like a lot of Africans started coming to church, and it was an amazing time. We learned new songs. We got used to the I don't know how to describe it. The clicks and the sounds, it was amazing. Like it's a melting pot of culture, and that was the celebration. That was the introduction to the cultures that make me.
Yeah.
But no, I was never taught neatly like you are black. This is this. No. As for like what you look like and hair and features, that never really came into anything.
Yeah.
I'm around people that look like me.
Yeah.
My features are celebrated. Full stop. Everybody's beautiful in here. I'm not diminishing myself by any other standard, because you can't measure black people by white people. We're different. We're different.
Yeah.
We're built differently. So that was never a thing. I don't know who that is. Yes, he is.
So yeah, I'm gonna throw the question out to the audience. I believe auntie there. Thank you so much. So yeah, please, what's your name? Sorry.
My name is Brenda.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I'm kind of touching on a few issues that have been raised.
Yeah.
And I think I sort of identify the most with, what's your name? I forgot you. Sinead. Yes, a lot of our experiences are from what our parents have taught us. And I believe as a parent myself, I have a responsibility to share what I've experienced, whether it's negative or positive, because I'm intending for my children to either not experience what I have or to equip them of what life could really be like. It's easy, and I'm not criticizing your parenting, But it seems easier not to mention certain things because you want to protect your children. You don't really want them to take away the pain, or to carry the pain, yet to take on the pain that you experienced, and which is, I think it's a personal choice. But I believe we all... Can they not hear?
If you don't mind.
There? Okay. I'll try. Is that better? Great. Okay, so I'm saying it's a choice to... Mr. Ngubes just said he would prefer to have not told his children about the traumas he experienced of apartheid and all of that. And I respect that. Personally, I would have wanted my children to understand what I went through, not necessarily for them to take it on and make it their experience, but just for them to be aware that this is what life can throw at you. And personally, if you think about what it says in the Bible about God telling the Israelites as they were leaving Egypt, that when your children ask you, why are we doing these things? We have a responsibility to tell our children of the slavery, of whatever difficulties we've had, and what we should be, how we should handle it. So parents have that responsibility. I think we ought to be really tactful. I think the issue is, how tactful are we when we are telling them of the difficulties? Of course, we always celebrate the good things, like what Jabari said, but then it's also good for them to be aware of whatever difficulties we had.
I just before we get to this to this, I just wanted to ask: do any of the young people know what apartheid is? Does everyone know or not? Anyone not know what apartheid is? No? Brilliant. So yeah, we'll just get to this answer.
For me, the comment about being taught culture. Culture is what you live. Culture is your values, your beliefs, your understandings, your traditions, the way you do things. It's very difficult to probably understand maybe your parents sometimes if they don't tell some of their stories, because a lot of their values and their beliefs have come from a lot of the traumas that they've experienced, and then they will deal with their children and situations in certain ways because of their experiences, and that is culture. So I, as an adult, understand my parents much more now, not because of what they told me, but because what I've learned to understand now. But at the time as a child, some of the things that you go through with your parents can be very traumatizing, but it's their own traumas that are playing themselves out, because some of the things that they believe, then they carry them out in actions, and they talk to you. Colour was a big thing in my house, for example, because my grandfather is mixed race. So he's coming from slavery, he's a slave master's child.
Wow.
And then my grandmother on the other side is a very dark woman, very, very dark. Now he's grown up with issues about colour. He just happened to love a very black woman. But then when he has children of lots of different colours, they're all treated differently because of their different shades. And then that gets passed down to the children. So in our house, there was lots of issues about shades. I'm not as light as I was, but as a child, I was very fair compared to my siblings. So that would cause issues with my siblings. Even at church, the church family would say, why you like them so white? So what I'm saying is, culture is not just about teaching. We live culture, and it comes out in our beliefs, our values, and what we understand as reality.
I want to be able to throw, before we move on, I want to throw a question out to the audience and to the panelists as well. Do you think the church plays a massive role in being able to educate people on our history and being able to pass down this information as well? Yes. I'm gonna ask the one of the panelists. I'm gonna ask Jabari first. What do you? In fact, do you want to answer for a second?
Yeah. I think the Adventist Church has a wealth of history, from both black and white, and I think the church should be prioritizing sharing our history as Adventists, because I believe that's where we should find our core identity as Adventists worldwide. This is who we are. We look at slavery, we look at it from an Adventist perspective. What did we do? Where were we? Because we were there. Adventists were there. We were involved in the freedom of slaves. Christian history, we talk about how we reflect and look back at trauma. I kept on thinking about the story of the Exodus. Don't know how long, we know they were there for 400 years, don't know how long they were oppressed for. But the fact of the matter, they were oppressed and they were liberated. And we look at the story and we see how God was involved, how God tried to save Pharaoh himself. He tried to show him, I am God. He tried to save him. Yeah? And we're supposed to have this character in us where we are supposed to reflect the same image of God. So I feel like when we, in the modern day, share our history, I mean, I guess probably because where I learned a lot of my history from, I learned a lot of my history from school. We had like Black History Month. We watch these movies and we talk about this and we talk about how wicked the white man was, put it that way, at school. This is the perspective of history we learn at school. It doesn't teach us anything about forgiveness, about getting over, getting past that, how to deal with what we receive from that. And as Elder was saying, do we need to receive the trauma of it? When we talk about the Exodus in the Bible, we are Christians. Technically, it is our history. You know what I mean? But do we receive trauma from that? You know what I mean? That we have to live with. Mm-hmm. Why should we receive trauma from things that happened, even if it's more recent? Slavery, we say, okay, slavery is more recent. Why should we have to deal with trauma from that? Mm-hmm. When we think about the Holocaust and the Jews, it was horrible, but we're not traumatizing Germans.
Just to say about trauma, and some people do get traumatized by things that they read in the Bible and the history and the things that do, but it's about the journey that you have to go to healing. So once you understand that this thing happened, if you was here at the beginning, I talked about trauma and what's happened inside of you as a result of something that's happened to you. So sometimes things happen to you directly, or like Ruth was saying, it could be secondary. And so we're much closer to the trauma because it's personal. We can see it, it's real, it's live. When you're reading from the Bible, you're probably reading it like way back. It's a bit more distant from you. Mm-hmm. But it just depends on what you take away from it. Because what may traumatize you may not traumatize me. So trauma is relative to you and your experience of receiving that experience. Does that make sense? Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Give a round of applause, please. Right. So we're going to move on to the next question. And Laz, I don't know if you want to read the stats for the next one. I'll just read out the next question, and then we're just going to move on from it. So the next question is going to be, oh, dear me. Let me move on. What's the problem with having bad eyes, guys?
Do you want a magnifying glass to read the questions?
Listen, I need more than that. So, what are some of the beliefs we have about other Africans and African Caribbeans? So I'm gonna read that again. So, what are some of the beliefs that we have about other Africans and African Caribbeans? Do we understand that question well? Does that make sense? So I'm gonna throw.
Can I ask though, in what context though? Because it's very. It's very broad.
So, no, so essentially, like, what do we believe about each other, kind of thing. So what do we know about each other? What are some of the myths that we kind of been told about each other and the perceptions? Does that make sense? I'm gonna throw that to Kiki. That's okay. Sorry?
Yeah, I feel like you have to put a context. Because if I was just to say a random, like, oh, I think such and such about whatever.
Let me give it to Zainaid for a second. Do you understand the question?
Like, for example, like, how do we view the
Yeah, so for example, as Africans, for example, how do we view Jamaicans or Caribbean people?
well-
And as Caribbean people as well, how do we view Africans? What are some of the beliefs that we kind of have about each other on the opposite end? Does that make sense? Does that make a lot more sense? So in my household, what is the beliefs that I have, that I've been told about Caribbeans? And also for Caribbeans, what are the beliefs that you've been told about Africans?
So, for me as an African, about the Afro-Caribbeans, I was taught that, like, we are all one because they were, like, taken away from motherland.
Yeah.
Like, that's how far I can answer it.
Yeah.
So I'll say that, like Sinead, there is no kind of different belief. My dad's taken us all to Ghana many, many times. I actually love Ghana a lot. So there's no separate belief about Africans. We're black people.
I'm gonna interject there, and for me, for example, and I'm gonna open this conversation and be very real. So not so much from my household, but from Africans and certain aunties and stuff like that. I've been told, for example, that Jamaicans and Caribbean people are gangsters. You know, they're weed smokers, they're rough people, don't hang around. Like, let's be real. Get me? Let's be real for a second. So these are kind of stuff that I've directly heard. Do you understand? Or I'll be with certain aunties and they're like, those Jamaicans.
So I'd like to just come back to this point. So if we remember the debate from the last time we had it, I think that's how we even came about having the youth panel, in that the experience of our elders are very different to the experience of the youngers and even of the children. So I'm trying to think when I heard it, but I'm sure I've heard children say that they experience, a divide between Caribbeans and Africans. I'm not saying that there's no divide at all, but I'm saying that everybody's experience of the divide is different.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say, for me, and possibly my generation, I don't think that that divide is as deeply cut as it would be for other generations, in that I think when you're younger, you are under your parents' jurisdiction, and what you know is from home. And so you can only go informed from what you've been taught from your own culture. But then when you get to like university sides, that's the ultimate mixing pot. And I'll say a lot of what I learned about black culture at large was from university. When I was mixing with every single type of black person, my eyes were opened, absolutely open. And so for me, yes, elders can tell me, oh, well, you know that, but it's up to me to make that decision as to how that feeds into what I do.
No, 100%. I believe like it's ultimately down to you what you do with that information. But the question is really like, what have you been told? So what belief?
The question is, what were your beliefs? So our beliefs are, they're dictated by our experience, and your experience is your experience. So their experience would dictate that they would tell you that, but it's your beliefs. So that's what answers your question.
I'm gonna answer you. What I have heard from I've heard more from Africans about the negative connotations about Caribbean people. I have also heard, yes, from people in the Caribbean culture about certain cultures. So things that come to my mind, I think I've heard people say, I don't know, Zimbabweans, alcoholics, and a bit wild. I've heard that before, and that's a thing. I'm not saying.
Henrietta's eyebrows, right?
I'm not saying I agree. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that's something that I've heard. Or I've heard. Okay, Nigerian boys are fraudsters. I heard Yahoo boys, 419ers. I've heard that stuff. Yes, those are things that I've heard. But it's not like I feel like the question is.
So you're saying that you've heard that more so from Africans?
Yeah, I've heard that more so from Africans than I've heard about Caribbeans.
Africans, would you agree or disagree?
For us Africans, we've heard it more from the Caribbean.
Yeah,
I think it's just that.
Hold on, let me land my plane. But I have also heard Caribbeans criticize Africans about certain things. So I don't know, it might take for instance my friend in university. I've gone around to her house or her accommodation. I've said, oh, it's like it smells in here. And she goes, oh, it's Africans cooking. And I'm going, oh, wow, I didn't like that. That to me, when she said it to me, that was strange. I was like, African people's food smell. I didn't know that. Those are the things that I have heard, but that's not necessarily. I feel like the question is a bit dangerous in asking, but these are the answers, and these are the things that get said.
No, you can be honest.
It's from both sides, yes. But for me personally, I've heard that more. The criticisms more from other Africans about both sides, both Caribbeans, both Africans. I've heard those negative connotations come from there.
I'm gonna go to Zainaid, and I'm gonna make a point after that. So Zainaid, if you can, give your take on this.
Like for example, in school. Like a lot of Caribbeans, they make fun of our hair, but like, how are you making fun of my hair when we have the same texture?
Yeah.
So like, I don't get it. We're like the same people. That's why I was saying we were taught that we are one. At the end of the day, we're all black.
Yeah, I feel like, for me, for example, I got to a certain point of a realization once I got a lot more mature and I got into a circle where you're gonna end up interacting with a lot more of these people. But certain beliefs, for example, you have to understand that a lot of these beliefs are installed in us from when we're kids. So we're very hesitant to even step out the nest. Why? Because we've been taught this by people who are uncles, are parental figures. Do you understand? Like, and it ends up affecting some of the decision making. For example, even in the dating scene. Let's be real. Like, we get told, for example, sometimes that don't go for Jamaican girls or Caribbean girls because they're rude. No, honestly, to like lies, am I lying?
Being honest.
Well, we get told, for example, don't go for it because they're rude, because they're ratchet, they don't know how to respect men or whatever. And as African guys, we're even very hesitant. And this could be the person that God's told you, for example, I want you to be. And now you're almost even stopping God's plan because of a belief that you've been told from when we're kids. So it's like. So in that, for example, in the African community, a lot of the time, there's a thing where the African women, are submissive to their husbands, right? And they're taught how to respect men, and also men how to treat your wives. And there's this thing, and that's why a lot of the time people just end up staying in their cliques, and they don't want to spread. They don't want to go out to the different cultures. And let's be real, these are a lot of things that do happen. I'm sorry, do you want to say something? You're gone.
Yeah, sorry. Before you stay on to that, just one of the notions that I've heard, I just remembered when I was at uni.
Yeah.
I have heard that Caribbean people aren't real black people.
Ooh.
From an African person. So, and it was quite a shame actually, because it was my housemate. We did have a good conversation about it, but don't drink, didn't drink. Them lot went out drinking, and it actually was repeated back from my white friend. So he was telling the white people, like, no, we're the true black people. We wasn't turned into slaves. We were the real ones. We stayed here. We were stronger, etc. So we are better in a sense. So they're not kind of the washed version of black people.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard that Caribbean are. So we had a good conversation after that, and we both had a good understanding. But
being real black. Light, I don't know if you've got. I want Light. I don't know if you've got anything to say about this topic, and then we'll get to you, sir. No problem. So Light, what's your take on this? Yeah.
My take. I actually feel like I've progressed, and I think exposing myself to different environments. I think because my friendship group now is really broad, we've got a lot of mixed cultures and we have a mutual respect. I think that the first step that I took in terms of breaking that stigma was having open conversations and just being able to open your mind to being able to receive other people's cultures. But yeah, in terms of what you hear a lot. You hear that, again, like Jamaicans or Caribbeans are aggressive. And even in me just saying
say
Jamaicans,
don't lie, say Jamaicans.
They're the only type of Caribbeans that exist or that are irrelevant. Do you know what I mean? So like we make jokes like, oh, that was and it's honestly so bad because you're having to like prove the goodness of an individual because of where they're from. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
And just to open, let me just open.
Even within Africans though.
Yeah, I was going to say just to open a bracket. Like when we're talking about the information and how much do we know about other people's cultures, it's like to Africans, the only Caribbeans we actually know are Jamaicans. Like we don't actually know that the Caribbean is a massive place and there are so many other like cultures and islands there. But for us, all we know as Africans is Jamaicans. Do you understand? So I think that's another point which I wanted to add there. So yeah, Jabs, you were going to say something, and then we're going to move to the brother there, and then we're going to move on to the next question.
Kiki's going to say something. Go on.
Yeah, what I wanted to say was...
No problem. Yeah,
what I was going to say was, when I was in school,
yeah,
that I used to be made fun of because of my type of hair. Like, I'll see some Jamaicans with straighter hair. So, like, they would have big afros or dreadlocks or something like that. I used to be like, I think discriminated would be the right word for, like, my type of hair. Yeah.
Okay. Jabs? Ask the question.
I thought I'll go back to what you were saying before about like, I don't know, the dating scene or whatever you want to call it. I was speaking to someone from Zimbabwe and they were saying to me that she would never bring me to her parents because of my hair and my dreadlocks. Yeah. And then she said that Jamaicans we smoke weed, we have loads of baby mothers, so you go and impregnate the whole world and don't come back and look after them pitney. And I go and do all this stuff. But I said to them, but like, you guys do the same exact thing though? If when I've been around other Zimbabweans, yeah, and I look and I hear them talk about the culture, I'm like, it's the same thing with Jamaican culture, so what are you talking about? Yeah. When they talk about, when you go to your little bashment and dance or raves and you go dancing with each other and blah, 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 etc., etc., I look at like another culture and go, but they're doing the exact same thing. It's just that you whatever was taught down to them or whatever was taught down to me is negative because it's not home. Because I look out away and I see what looks like is bad to them. Yeah. That's like a negative thing to them. So they will come and look at me and go, no, you can't go with Javari because he's got dreadlocks. He's probably going to impregnate you and leave you. And then go and do X, Y, and Z and go drink up and be gangsters or whatever.
It's real life stuff.
I'm not saying that doesn't happen. Because I can't like close my eyes to it and say it doesn't happen. Because it does happen. But that's not. What's a bashment? I don't know. If you type in Google, you'll find out. So as I was saying, you can hear all this information from what people say, but I feel like sometimes the negative things, if they look back on it in themselves, in their own culture, you would see quite a lot of similarities, and negative or positive. Yeah. So all the bad things that we say, I'd say, what did Jamaicans say? You know, what's it say? Don't dance abroad before you dance up. No, dance at home before you dance abroad.
You're not a real Jamaican.
Oh wow, are you? Oh wow. Don't do that to me. It's all right. I'm going back to Jamaica for a refresher lesson.
All right, we're going to move to the brother there for a second. Give a round of applause to Jabari. Thank you. 2 minutes, 2 minutes. What's your name, sorry?
My name is Ade.
No problem.
But looking at this,
One house, everyone?
I don't feel comfortable anymore. Looking at what's popping up there, I don't feel comfortable anymore. Anyway, let me leave that one aside. Oh, yeah. I didn't know about most of the things until I get into the UK. Yeah. Back in Africa, we don't talk about Caribbean, who they are, what they do or anything. But getting into the university, there's a pub at the back of the university, close to the stadium. Then it was a Jamaican pub. And my cousin said, if you're coming from this uni in the night, please don't pass there. And I said, what's going on? He said, that belongs to the Jamaicans and things like that. And anything can happen to you. So what I'm trying to say is that back home, we don't talk about most of these things. But getting here, I just realized that, okay, there is a difference. And they say, oh, the Jamaicans, they say, oh, they are the one that sold us into slavery. And I say, okay. So what I'm saying is that if you ask somebody in the street of Lagos, what we're discussing here, they don't know anything about it. And that's the truth. They don't know anything about it. And I realized also, when I work with a boy in MHD in the hospital, one-to-one, I was just trying to shut him up and ask him a couple of questions. And I said, oh, do you know anything about Africa? Because my guy, Zimbabwe, that we studied together, I've been saying that they showed them all sort of things on the movie. I don't want my children to know anything about that. They said, but I don't believe it as if this guy is just saying what he's saying. So when I was trying to talk to the guy, this is the guy that was having mental health issue. And I asked him that, what do you know about Africa? He said, Africa what? Africa, no, they live on trees and they drink dirty water. Yeah. And I was, and you said, yeah. So that's it. So what they show you, this guy is playing on in his brain, that things like that happening. So most of these things are history that have been passed from one person to the other. But if we try to dig into that here, we're gonna even teach some people about what has been said, and they will know about it. I don't think it will bring something positive out of it.
Thank you very much. Round of applause. You have something to say, sir? What's your name, sorry, sir?
Sean.
Oh, nice to meet you, sir.
I think when we are being very honest, I do believe I speak on behalf of some African brothers and sisters. The truth of the matter is, as Africans, right, we do look at our Caribbean brothers and sisters as superior, or we are sort of conditioned to do so as superior to us. And that's a fact, right? Yes, that's the honest truth.
That's strange to a lot of Caribbeans, I'll tell you that for a fact.
Yeah.
Nah, I don't know about that one.
No,
I'm saying that it's straight. What you just said is strange to a lot of Caribbeans.
Yeah, I know it's very strange.
Repeat what you said again.
I say, as Africans, when we come into workplaces or we come into England or whatever it is, we are conditioned to believe that Caribbean people are superior to Africans, right? Yeah. And that is a fact. Okay. So what I'm saying to you is, because these things are not said, because for the most part is when you say things like that, people say, oh, that's not true. But I'm talking from experience, okay? So therefore, I'll give you a perfect example. In Africa, we love the Caribbean culture. We love the Caribbean music. You know, the most popular music in Africa the last 15 to 30 years, right, it's been reggae music, dancehall music. We don't even adhere our own music or even our own cultures because we look up to the Caribbean culture. All right. So the matter of the fact is, speaking to most African people, which I have done my own studies, done my own research, for the most part, we look at Caribbean people as superior. And I've had experience of people saying, from my own experience, right, of African people say, we feel inferior to Caribbean people. Or not all Caribbean people, some individuals.
I'm sure so why is it some Caribbeans, do some Caribbeans also feel that Africans, come across superior to them as well?
I wouldn't say they come across superior, but I would say that it's like you look down on us because of who we are. So like, anytime I come across someone that's not really around a lot of Caribbeans, they look at me like I am lesser than them because, I don't know, maybe I've been tainted by being in England or being from a certain country or whatever.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Can I just say something for a second? Just to add to that, I think if you see the timeline of how things happen, I think that's more so a thing now.
Yeah.
Because when I came to the country, you saw that, Caribbean people were a lot more superior than us. Like I remember a lot of the bullying that I faced when I was younger was from my fellow black people that were Caribbean. And obviously Caribbean culture was a lot more popular in England. Now it seems like there's a transition that's happened where it's more so Afro beats are taking over. African culture is a lot more popular.
So to tell you why that is because
we feel like we're gonna get back at you guys for all those years of trauma.
No, but to tell you why that is, okay, my grandparents came over here to England, and my mom and dad were born in England. Yeah. So what? They're second generations here. You were not born in Jamaica. Bilston is not a parish. So you've got, my grandparents came from Jamaica. My mom and dad were born in England, so they're the first generations that were born here. I am now the second generation that was born here, meaning that my culture is going to be settled down here. More so because we've been here for longer.
Right.
So because we've been here for longer, and some of us have been born here. So now, yeah, it's like our I don't know what, like our fortress has already been built. Like our wall has already been put here in place to say, yeah, because we've been here for a while now. So you said you've come over from Congo.
Yeah.
Me, you're the same age.
No, we're not.
Oh, we're in the same. We're in the same generation. We're in the same generation. Yes. Okay. We're in the same generation. Do you see what's happened there?
Okay.
Me and you are in the same age generation, but you were born in Congo that came over here.
Yeah.
I am I'm second generation here, born here. So my culture is already here, ingrained in here. So of course our reggae and our cultures and our food and all the way we dress and we talk is going to be here. When I even look at music and I see that over time, you see a reggae music got passed down to I don't know, over like things. Of course it's going to happen. So now that you guys are here and you have put your feet on the ground, your generation's brought the music back to life.
Yeah.
I've never heard more Afro beats in my entire life until the past 5 years.
All right,
So of course it's going to be a thing.
move on to Brother to continue what you were saying.
Yeah, so basically, thank you, my brother. So, okay, so what has happened then? If we look at the immigration from the Caribbean brothers and sisters, coming from the 50s, maybe, they established a ground force before the Africans came over here. So by the time the African diaspora came over here, we're talking about the late 70s, 80s, there had been 30 years of integration with the Caribbean people and the English people, hence the culture, they could relate to each other's culture. So when Africans came over here now, we had to relearn how we can actually integrate into the culture. So therefore, I'm telling the truth, right? As an African person, I've been told by Caribbean brothers and sisters to go back to my country. Okay? Yes, it's happened. I mean,
you're being honest, you're telling the truth.
yeah. So, but I'm saying individuals, I'm not saying all of them. So when you try to understand why you would tell me as an African to go back to my country when you're from a Caribbean background, to me, it means that maybe there's an element of superiority complex or looking down upon a person purely based on where they're coming from. And again, it's not every Caribbean, again, it's not every African. Both sides have things and issues that we need to deal with. But I'm telling you, from our own experience, from our own studies and research, for the most part, Africans I've spoken to, we feel that our Caribbean brothers and sisters are not more, but they're superior to us as Africans in terms of how we're viewed in the society.
Yeah, thank you very much. Give a round of applause. We're going to go to Kiki. You're just going to give your point of view, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I was born in the UK.
Yeah.
So the image that was descriptive of Africa and Jamaica were different. For example, Africa would be known as a poor, dirty place where all the poor kids are, many animals. But then in Jamaica, it would be like beaches, sunny beaches.
Yeah.
Like, everything is good there. But so when I first visited Africa in 2017, I was around 6-7 years old.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see how much rich people there were. Like,
100.
for example, in England, you'd have a fancy car, you'd be called, considered rich. But in Africa, to eat well, to have lots of land, that's what you would consider a rich person. Because what we call wealthy is different in England from Africa because of where we've come from. So that's why.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I'm just gonna, before I give it to Uncle there, I'm just gonna open up just another bracket. I think when it comes to this question and talking about beliefs of what we think of each other, I think it's starting to become a thing that's actually affecting the way we actually even serve God, and it's affecting the church as well. Because, for example, like I remember when I first came with my hair, oh gosh, the way the aunties were looking at me, because they were like, that's not something that Africans do. Do you understand? That's more of a Jamaican thing to do. Do you understand? And you sometimes make people feel uncomfortable to serve God. Someone might walk in with dreadlocks, for example, and you look at them and you're just like, they feel uncomfortable to even serve, to worship God, because they feel out of place in this place that's, you know, more meaningful. And even for me, coming to a place, being African, like, I don't want to feel, I almost just want to stay comfortable with the people that I know, because I feel like if I come to a, you know, a church where there's mostly Jamaican people and they look at me in a type of way because I'm African, it may actually affect the way I serve God. And I think that's one thing we've got to consider, that when we start infiltrating, you know, our, you know, ludicrous like beliefs of each other, you know, in culture, it actually starts to affect the way we actually worship as well, and the way we decide to serve God. So I think that's one thing we need to consider as well. So I'm just going to move on.
I think I've been described as a coconut. I don't know whether I think most people understand that. Because for me, anything that's holding me down, I'm just going to drop it. Even if it's my culture, even if it's my history.
Sorry to cut you, sir. Does everyone know what a coconut is? Yes. Brilliant.
Yeah.
No one knows what a coconut is? Could you explain what a coconut is?
I'm white inside and black outside.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'll embrace that, because if being Zimbabwean is holding me down and I'm not progressing, I'm not going to just carry it on and carry the burden. And this, for me, is not something I would encourage my own daughters to do. So you'll find that my daughters get on with anyone, because we don't decide on who is who, and this is how we're going to get on. Now, that took a lot of unlearning, because I had certain principles. To me, a young man with dreadlocks was gay already, because that's
so
what...
just say I'm not?
That's what... Yeah, no. I'm talking about the default setting.
Yeah.
So for me, if you have plaited hair, you've got girlish tendencies.
Yeah.
So my first impression of you is, this is a man who's not strong enough to be a man.
Where did you get that from, sorry, sir?
That's from my African background. Okay? But that took me to unlearn those things and drop it.
Yeah.
And therefore, when you look at me, and I'm talking about my culture, there are certain things I don't do which my own people will do, and as a result, I'm called a coconut. But if we don't unlearn some of these things, we're going to carry on with all this generational baggage that we're talking about, which young people are mentioning.
Yeah.
I like the way that more people are now being enlightened by meeting other people in universities.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter how much life you get.
Can everyone just be quiet for a second?
If at home you're going to get the same darkness that clouds the light that you received. And this is what I was talking about, is young people to say, at times, my history, if I project it to you in a careless manner, it transfers my head onto you. Henrietta is from Rwanda. There is a Tutsi and the Hutu, and they killed each other. It's very recent. If she doesn't project it well to her daughter, don't know, it might just damage the way she looks at the other generation.
Yeah.
I'm from a Dep't tribe. In Zimbabwe, there is the Shonas, and we believe that we don't believe the Shona people were responsible for genocide against the Dep'ts. And I lost a number of relatives we haven't accounted for and haven't buried. If I took my history and projected it to my daughter, she will hate the Shonas. But that's not for her to continue doing. I'm not shedding away my history, but what I'm saying is my history will not hold me back to love a Shona person. And just the last second, I was close to having my children marry a Jamaican or anything because of my tradition. But having lived in this country and seen a number of successful intercultural marriages, I've realized that this thing can work. And it's taking me to accept, to say, even though I have my own shopping list of what a man should be, that's not my daughter's shopping list. And therefore, I have to unlearn these things and let my daughters be.
Thank you, Lou, because that was very thought-provoking. Do you know what? I'm hearing so much here, so many new things. And the brother here, he mentioned about Caribbean thinking that they're superior to the Africans. I have never heard that, or vice versa. So it's a matter of what you've been told and perspectives. My parents came here, and they taught us so many things. But because they didn't know the African culture, how on earth could we know it? And that's why this big debate is all about dispelling the myths and the facts between cultures. I'm looking at the Mentimeter. African men are lazy. White men are lazy. Asian men are lazy. It's just a cultural thing. You can get a bunch of different nationalities and they would say exactly all of that, right? Because it's not cultural, it's individual. And people need to understand that. White men are abusive. Otherwise, we wouldn't have prisons here. We wouldn't have domestic violence units. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? We wouldn't have... Pardon? Yeah, and another thing my sister mentioned, and it's true, is that we say that Caribbean men have a lot of children. But Boris Johnson, right? 4 baby mother, and is disowning one of his children. Yeah. It's a cultural mindset. It's not set in stone. But what Lucas was saying, and I'm hearing that you're really wanted to have the mind of God, and you want to pass that on to your children. Because having the mind of God will mean that all these things will just pale into insignificance. We've come here to serve the Lord. We've come here to be better than this. And the myths and the facts, well, the myths are given by the devil himself.
Yeah, but Auntie Reef, I just wanted to ask something.
Yes.
What's the difference between something being a myth or something that's done more frequently in another culture?
Well,
because you could say that, okay, it's a myth and it's just something that, talk about. What if someone's just saying that this is that frequently happens in African cultures, or this is something that we frequently see more so in Caribbean culture than African culture, and then they come to their conclusions because of that.
Yeah, but if I've never known an African to do that, what am I going to think? I'm going to think it's got one there, Nigerian men are kind and intelligent, because I've met Ade, and it's true. Yeah. Now, somebody would say, Nigerian men love money. I don't know that. It's what I've grown to know. And I love Henrietta and Ade. I love my African brothers and sisters because I've studied the Bible enough to know that we're all one blood, one race, one people. And the devil himself has brought this divide. It's not just being by normality. It's by pure design. The enemy doesn't want us to come together because once we do, we're a powerhouse against him. Yeah. So we need to have the foundation biblically. One last thing, in the Bible, cultural wars. The 12 tribes are always fighting against themselves, killing each other, the Benjaminites against the Ephraimites and all of that. This is nothing new. We're just coming and thinking it's a normal thing, but for us, or abnormal, but the Bible says it's normal because of sin. Yeah. And we need to look at all of this post-sin as opposed to before sin, because we need to get the narrative right and change our perspectives.
Yeah, so, thank you. Give a round of applause. So we're just going to swiftly move on to the next question, and I'm going to give this. And we're going to be winding up soon, so we've got two more questions, and then unfortunately that's the end. And we're going to go back to the panel. So the next question would be, what are some of the cultural differences and cultural similarities between us, e.g. food, music, celebrations, wedding and wakes, worship, dress, parenting, customs, belief and entertainment? I'm going to say that question again. So what are the cultural differences and cultural similarities between us, food, music, celebrations, worship, dress, parenting, customs, beliefs and entertainment? I'm going to give that to the panel, and I'm going to start with Jabari first, and then we're going to go to...
You love picking on me, innit?
Henrietta.
I can talk on like 2 things the most. I was probably say like entertainment more, the music side. Like when because I make music, I produce music. I often go down in these weird rabbit holes of like different genres of music. So I look at reggae, and so I was watching a video of this guy, and he was like doing all these different drum beats, and he was going through all the different drum beats, and he was like, okay, this drum beat is from Nigeria, this drum beat is from reggae, this drum beat is from here, whatever. And then you listen to them all, and you hear, and you're like, they all sound exactly the same, but they're missing like a beat. So the similarities are that because we're all black, we all run. There's a saying in America called CP time, colored people time. We all move on the same time, on the same clock. It's very weird. You'll watch a song, you listen to a song, and you'll think about it, you're like, well, that sounds exactly the same as, I don't know, what so-and-so is doing over here. And then to go on to food, you look at food, every culture curries goat, but they call it something different. I'll go to an African event, or a Caribbean event, and I will 100% get a dish that has some goat meat that's curried. But I'll say, oh, this is curry goat. And you go, no, this is something else. I'm like, well, it looks exactly the same. It's brown. It's got a bunch of oil in there. And when it's on my plate, it tastes good. When I think of rice, you got jollof, you got rice and peas, but really, it's from the same family as rice. Like, we have all our similarities, especially in food, is all just ingrained in ourselves. Like, it's just music, food. It's even though we were taken from wherever we were taken from, we all run in the same like clock, and all our similarities, especially in those aspects. Like, yeah, they do. I find that so funny.
Yeah.
I find it so.
We're gonna go to Shikania for a second, and then what are the similarities that we have culturally?
I'd say that we have a lot of similarities, and I think that really hit me when I went to Ghana and we were in the market, and it just felt like a home away from home. And I've only ever been to Jamaica one time, and I don't particularly remember it because I was 2, but it didn't seem like I was in a place away from my people. Like it just felt similar. Yeah. So in the similarities in our clothes, we all like to dress extremely brightly coloured. We're out here in bright greens, reds, oranges, and you know, we have certain mannerisms. So one of the things that really struck me when I went to South Africa was that as a British person, we do this polite smile when we walk past people, like it's not real. We're not showing teeth, but we do that polite. And so when I was over there, I was doing that little smile thing, and I was like, why is everyone nobody smiles back? And they were saying, well, actually, it's just not what we do here. If you're going to greet somebody, you say something. And that's just like Caribbeans. We're not always smiling at folks. We've got quite stony faces sometimes. Like, we do have straight faces, and that's a similarity. I think there's a lot of similarities. Yeah. I just can't think of them all.
Henrietta?
I would say that the similarities I would highlight probably is that, for example, with Nigerians, they speak a form of broken English called Pidgin. Yeah. And then I know with the Caribbeans, they speak Patois. And I've heard that there are some similarities. I'm not sure how true that is, that they can kind of understand each other. We use a lot of proverbs as well. I think both Caribbeans and Africans, we use a lot of proverbs to explain different situations in life.
So the question I was going to ask to add on top of that, so do we get each other mixed up with each other or not?
Yeah. All the time? Don't we always play spot the Jamaican, spot the Congolese? Every time I see someone, like, we will see someone walk, and they dress loud. We go, are they Jamaican or are they Congolese? And you've got to look at them and go, all right, they've got these shoes on that are too loud. Well, it's matching with this blue hat and this green trousers, but shoes are like fluorescent certain. And you're like, is this Congolese or Jamaican? And you got a spot. Yeah. You got to spot it. You're like, I'm not quite sure, but I'm gonna take a guess, and it's quite fun to play.
I think for me as well, I think the beauty about cultures is the fact that we share certain things in common and we don't. Even like with food and certain things with Caribbean culture, and African culture, there's a lot of things we don't share in common. A lot of things. But I think that's the beauty for us to be able to learn that, understand? For us to be able to go out our way and actually still find ourselves in unity, because we may not actually, you know, have similarity in a certain area. But what I will do is I'll come out my way to learn, do you understand? To take part as well. And so that, and I think that's the most important part. Because we can be here and give a long list of things that, you know, that we do share in common, but there's a lot of things that we don't. And I think one thing I kind of learned is with my friendship group, there's a mixture of Africans, there's a mixture of Caribbean people and Jamaicans. And with that, I started to embrace a lot more and learn a lot more about myself through learning about their culture as well. And I think that's the beauty about it. We need to learn to be open-minded, that we may not actually share a lot, but I'm ready to learn from you as well. How was that? Yes, sir?
There is one big difference that has affected a number of young relationships. And I'll speak from the Zimbabwean side. I'm not sure how far wide it is in Africa. And it's called the dowry. And that's a big issue that even myself cannot unlearn. But it's such a big issue even unto our children. Our girls are starting to doubt whether this is something that should be carrying on. Because for us, it is not selling a young girl into marriage, but it is a process whereby two families get together to form and bond a relationship. But for somebody who's looking from outside in, they're looking at the process as like you're selling your daughter for a price. And as a result, such relationships I've noticed do not continue, because if the girl continues, she's almost disowned from the family. Or if she's not disowned, whatever problems she's going to have later in life, she's isolated. And if the other side is not willing to learn and accept that process, already the relationship is strained. So I'm not sure how the young people are going to deal with this aspect, but even some of us cannot unlearn that cultural thing.
Does everyone here know about bride price?
Yeah. Hello?
No?
Hello?
Latte, have you got something to say?
Yeah.
Does everyone here know it? Sorry, did you want to say something?
Oh.
Pardon?
So
Okay.
Okay, can I answer that?
So dowries.
Let Kiki go.
Kiki, go on.
Should I answer her question?
I'll let Kiki speak, and then we'll.
So dowry.
Make sure your comments are shorter, okay? Just want to get as many people in as we can towards the end.
Okay, so to answer your question, dowry is like a payment. We're saying thanks to like the father or mother for their daughter. In some countries, it's the opposite way. Instead of the man paying the dowry, it would be the woman. So that's basically what dowry is. Now, my question was resulting to this. Celebrations, for example, if there was to be a wedding, not just like your family would be involved, but your family's family and family's family. Like, because the celebrations go on for days and days and days, because like they're happy for like the marriage, or like Africans, they like to celebrate. Like you have the party going on for 4 or 5 days.
100%.
Yeah, and then for the dresses, there are lots of patterns on the dresses, like, and they're all in order. They're like organized. The patterns, there's many patterns on the dresses, and the food. From what I was saying, like I know more Shona than Debele. We call it sadza, but then you'll see some people in Nigeria, they call it fufu, or people in Debele, they call it strala, I think. Like, so it's the same thing, but they call it different things because of the different areas and nationalities. Then, yeah, the parenting is more like the same. If you're naughty, you get the belt out. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Because someone still said they don't know what dowry is. This is how it's explained to me by someone from Zimbabwe. When you I was speaking to this young lady, and she said to me, when you go and give money to their parents, you're basically paying them for, like, kind of thanking them for looking after them. So she said to me that her dad already set her bride price at £15,000, and her parents split the money up by saying, I'm paying for the clothes that her parents brought for her, I'm paying for the food that her parents brought for her, I'm paying for like how long her mom was looking after while she was pregnant. So, and then to top it off, she said to me that she said to me at the end, I can give the money to her parents over installments. So I said, I'm going to buy now, pay later my wife. I'm not going to do that. So that's what how that's what explained to me that she said she's from Zimbabwe, so it was all for like different parts of how she was growing up. So you're basically like kind of paying her parents for looking after her. That's how it's explained to me. Someone can say it's different.
We're gonna have one house and one house, and we'll let the brother here explain.
In Africa, we usually pay with cows.
I think what we need to understand, I think when we stick the word pay, we're going to lose we're going to lose the essence of dowry, because I've got 3 beautiful daughters. You can't pay me £10 million for one of my daughters. It just won't work. You know what I'm saying to you? Exactly. There's no price to anyone. Yeah. I'm not sure about your experience, but clearly some people approach this dowry from a selfish point of view. But that's not how it was originally. Because as African people, the white wedding is a new thing to us. Because prior to that, right, we used to bring families together, right? Dowry is a tradition. It's a traditional wedding that we bring people together. Again, I must emphasize, there is no price you can put on any child in terms of when you're marrying.
But then why is it called bride price?
Okay, exactly. We get lost in translation of actually what actually means, right? Because I say when we focus on certain words in that particular aspect, we lose the whole meaning of what a dowry is. Dowry is bringing 2 families together. Yeah. We continue to appreciate what our forefathers have done, right? When I married my wife, it is a token of appreciation of what the father and the parents have done to raise my wife to be the woman that she is for me enough to marry her. Again, I can't pay enough for my wife. It's priceless.
Yeah, but the problem because it goes to the parents and their family. It goes to the parents.
It goes to the parents.
The problem with that, which I would kind of argue, and we'll round it up.
Okay, let me just answer your question. The money goes to the parents and to the bride to help finish her home. Okay? And for the wedding. So the whole money is not going to the parents, the family. Some of the money goes back to the bride. She keeps that money to finish her home, the wedding, to prepare for her children. So in essence, like I'm saying to you, it's not a transaction where you're buying someone. No. There's so many facets, there's so many things that go into dowry that we spend the whole day trying to explain to it. But it's not how it's explained by the Western, who maybe lack a little bit of knowledge of how things go.
Okay, so sorry, just to interject there. Sorry, I'll let you speak. What I would ask, especially when it comes to especially when we talk about dowry, I agree with the sentiment of it with regards to it should be an appreciation of how the parents have raised this the daughter. But the problem I've seen personally with African culture, it's if it doesn't get paid or if you don't do it, then it won't happen. I think it should be. Wouldn't it make more sense? That should be initiated more so from you as the husband, more than it being demanded from the family. And if that doesn't happen, the marriage is off. So at that point, it does become transactional, wouldn't it?
No. Sorry. I'm just going to explain it from 2 points of view, because I know for time, myself and my wife are actually victims of the misconception of what dowry is. I'm going to explain. Before I married my wife, we approached our pastor. I'm not going to mention his name. He's from the Caribbean. He's Caribbean descent. So for him, he didn't understand the importance of me having to pay dowry before we even proceeded to the aspect of the wedding. And so because of that, he actually came and told us, in his eyes, he doesn't recognize the fact that our family have come together and have declared us married. Now, our process was, once dowry is complete, the ceremony, then we're going to proceed to the what? To the wedding. And so for him, he could not understand that concept. And why, for me, it's very important that we put this into context. Again, because we're speaking about culture and the importance of culture, is that the idea behind dowry is, because if you're even putting it in your mindset as payments, you're already lost. The idea of it is to bring families together. I'm going to tell you now, because all my sisters have been married, what dowry means is that we're just getting an excuse to bring aunts, because you know when aunts, uncles together for a meeting to discuss if these people should be rightly married.
With that being said, I'm just going to put something there. So I understand the sentiment of it, but the question I would ask, is it transactional?
What you're explaining is transactional?
So it is transactional. So in order for you to get the woman, if it's not done, you don't get, and that's the so it is a transactional
So
thing.
I'll put it this way. The idea behind it is that if the family does not meet the groom before anything, then they will not bless the marriage. So this is about blessing a marriage. So if you look at it from the perspective of transaction, it's just that every single, what they are trying to do is they're trying to see any red flags. So before anyone gets married in our culture, what you do is you say, okay, what's your name? Because in our country, we don't do DNA tests. We didn't have DNA. So what they will do is families will sit together. What's your name? Where are you from? Uncles speak to see if there's any relationship that could hinder that marriage. So this is almost like you doing your, DBS to make sure. And then if they aunts will now have a conversation with the groom to see is he worthy. And if they see him tinkering or not sure, then they will come and say, listen, we cannot agree for this to go forward. So that basically is the essence of dowry. It's not, if the groom can't pay or he's got not a single penny in his pocket, if the parents see that this man is genuine, it doesn't have to be a payment of such. It's just a commitment to say, and it's not like £5,000 pay right now.
No, but
if they say, we want 3 goats,
we're
go ahead and
do that. We're going to swiftly move on to Zainaid. Zainaid, do you have something to say?
Kiki.
Okay, we're going to go to Kiki. Kiki's got something to say, and then we're going to have to move on and wind up.
Dowry doesn't necessarily have to be money.
Sorry, everyone, could we just have silence for a second?
Dowry doesn't necessarily have to be money. I remember my dad telling me a bedtime story. It wasn't money that he paid for my mom, it's cows he paid for my mom. Because in Africa, things are different. It's not really money that would be used. That you wouldn't pay someone for your wife. Because when you put it like that, it sounds as if like you're money hungry. Like, sell my daughter. Like,
no, but okay. Although I hear what you're saying, yeah, it's still a transaction because you're just changing the currency. I give money to you in pounds. Okay, I'm gonna give you cows. Same thing. I'm giving you something to say we need to be one. Even if you don't see that, you said I might not have the money in my pocket, but if you see that if we're okay, but even before what you said that they've got to speak to each other to see if there's any red flags. Yeah. They're speaking to each other in transaction, like we're Alan Sugar and we're negotiating who can marry who.
These ladies,
still a transaction, isn't it?
30 seconds because we're going to just wind up. So I'm going to let you have your say.
Yeah, I can understand when you say it's like a transaction.
Yeah.
But I think it's because it's lost its essence over time, especially when people are saying, well, if there's no 15,000, then you're not having the daughter. It's just lost its essence.
Yeah.
But what it should have been is families coming together and the token of thanks. That's all it should be.
Yeah.
And so some people have made it more as a business, like he said, he's got 3 daughters. He could be looking at it as each daughter is a 15,000. That's not, yeah. Do you know what I mean? But that's not how it is. Originally, it shouldn't have been that way. Now, me and my husband, when we got married, it was a coming together of our families. That's how it was done.
Yeah.
We tried to do it the proper way. But then not all families do it that way, which is probably what you've now come to hear of, where it just loses everything, the essence of what it's supposed to be.
Thank you very much. No, we're just going to... No, 30 seconds on the clock.
Okay. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it's just how it comes through for me. For me, I think families can come together without money being part of the issue.
100%.
Also, I've spoken to some African people, and I get an understanding that maybe this needs to be cleared up for me, that the dowry price can be different depending on what it looks like to me, the value of the woman. So if she's a virgin, for example, she brings a bigger price. If she's been divorced before, she has a lesser price. If she's been married before, the price is different. For me, that tells me you are putting a money price on me as a person. I struggle with that. I struggle with it terribly. So I can hear all this about it's not a transaction and it's not about buying her. But gosh, if I've got a value, depending on what you perceive as my integrity, and I bring a different value depending on what I as a person bring to the table, I feel like you're buying me.
So I don't think we can solve the whole issue of the dowry here, but it's just, I think, for more understanding from different perspectives and different cultures. So I think we're going to wind up. So I'm going to ask my last question, and then we're gonna move on. So yeah, we're going to round up. So, sorry, Mom? Last have something to say? Last, you got 30 seconds.
I wasn't even going to... Okay.
You're going to say 30 seconds. I'm counting.
Why are you being... I think that the sentiment that people have spoken about remains the same and it's pure. I think that when you now stretch between cultures and families, it can be now something that's made to be extreme and you need to pay money at the door you can't go through. I think that, though, at the dating phase, if you've discussed this, if you don't feel like it's something that you don't want to go through with, don't disrespect someone's family and challenge that. Do you know what I mean? And say, I'm not going to... I think it's a bit... It's far. I think that from meeting somebody, if it's been discussed, which I feel like it should be, if it's not sitting well with you, I don't think that the relationship should continue. Because I think that further in that process, you're disrespecting someone's family and culture. Like if a man was to try and marry me and I say, this guy goes, I'm not going to do that, then the relationship is done. Do you know what I mean?
Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask my final question. Unfortunately. Has everyone got a lot more understanding? Brilliant. Cool. So we're going to get to... Yeah, so we're going to go to parental influences and relationships. And this is going to be the last question. So... This is... Okay. So, how important is your national heritage to you, or does it not matter because we are all Christians together? I'm gonna repeat the question. How important is your national heritage to you, or does it not matter because we are all Christians together? So I'm gonna choose Henrietta. Did you understand, or shall I repeat it one more time for you?
I think I understand.
Okay, do you want me to repeat it again?
Sure.
I'll repeat it again. So, how important is your national heritage to you, or does it not matter because we are all Christians together?
I would say that God created us different.
Yeah.
We come from different nationalities. So for me, my nationality is important to me. I'm especially grateful that my mom took the time to teach me my language as well. And it's something that I have been able to utilize in a positive way to communicate with relatives who don't speak English. So I think that as individuals, we have an identity because of where we come from.
Yeah.
But then again, when it comes to Christianity, God created us.
Yeah.
He decided where each of us would be born. So I don't think I see those two things separately.
Yeah.
I think that is who you are as a whole, your nationality and being a Christian.
Yeah.
I don't see that as a separate thing because I think God gave us both of those things.
Yeah. Kiki?
Yeah, I think it's very important to know our nationality. I think it's very important for us to know our nationality. But, am I okay? Because our nationality shows like who we are as a nation, as in like what we stand for, what we're known for. So I not just that we're Christians, but that's important too. But it's also important for us to know where we're from, like who we are and what we represent as like a country.
Right. Sinead?
Yeah, I think the same. It's important for you to know your nationality because I feel like it's identity.
Mhm.
At the same time, you won't come to church and praise God without knowing who you are first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir?
Who's Nigerian and Rwandese, or African and Afro-Caribbean or Jamaican, what nationality is important to that child and why?
Probably the one they were brought up from, or the ones that are familiar with.
Sorry?
The ones that they're familiar with.
Okay, so...
Okay, I'll repeat the question. You've got a child from parents who are of different nationalities. One is Nigerian, one is Rwandese. Which nationality is important for that child?
Well,
and
both
why?
of them. I think that's like
How does one person become both
no. Well, they do become both nationalities because you teach them both nationalities. But to answer your question, your nationality is important to you because that's who you are. I was born from a Jamaican household, but when we're all under one roof, worshiping God, I am Christian. We are Christians. You being from, I don't know, whatever country you're from, it doesn't really matter because we're worshiping God and we're all one race under Him. So once I'm here, once we hear and we sing it and we listen to the sermon and whatever we're Bible studying and everything like that under God's roof, we're all one people. But when on a personal level, yes, I am Jamaican and that's who I am and it's important to me. But yes, you being from Zimbabwe, or yes, you being from Nigeria, yes, you being from Trinidad, yes, you being from Germany, yes, that's who you are because you were born and that's who you were raised, and you were raised underneath that culture. But once I get inside church and I'm going to worship God with you, the only thing that matters to me is that you are Christian, that we both serve the same God, and that one day God's going to come and take us home. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Shakania, how about you? What do you think? Pardon?
You have to raise them to be both.
Right. So I'm gonna give my take and try and round up. I think with this question, what we see even with the Bible, it was very clear that Jesus was a Nazarite, for example. It was very clear that he was from somewhere, that he was born in Bethlehem, that he was a Nazarite. And this was mentioned a lot of the time, that Jesus the Nazarite. But if you saw that the whole point of Christianity was like, it doesn't matter if you're a Jew, it doesn't matter if you're a Gentile, it doesn't matter, because once we are all together in Christ Jesus, we are all the same. And I think that's the main thing that we kind of need to take. I think it's extremely important to be able to know where you're from, and that's something that we should always carry, and understanding that with my culture, when I'm with these people and the fact that we all believe in the same thing, we are all one, and I think that's what makes it a lot more beautiful. So I think that rounds everything up. So I want everyone to just give a round of applause for our panelists, and I'm going to let Brother Adrian take over. Also, I want to thank everyone as well for really taking part and coming here, because I think it's really important for us to be able to hash out these conversations. And I think the beauty about conversations, we may not always come to a conclusion today, but we've been able to open important conversations. So thank you also. And also, give a round of applause for yourselves for being here as well. Thank you so much.
And we'd just like to thank the host as well. Give him a big amen. Yes, I thank you all. We thank you all for coming and participating in this event. I think it's been really an eye-opener, and it's been really profitable. Thank you all so much for your contributions. And what we must understand here, that this brother here has said about the things he's had to unlearn. We have to unlearn things, and we have to learn new things, and sometimes relearn things that we have forgotten. But we did this one, as opposed to the other two debates, with the younger generation in mind. I went to a wedding. I was asked to do the reception at a wedding. And when I got out of the car to the actual wedding, there were some things that had happened in the past. So it turned out that, the Bible says the fathers have eaten sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge. It turned out that you had black and white. It was a big wedding, black and white, and when I got out of the car, you had all white people on that side. Did I say wedding? I meant a funeral. And you had black people. You had black people on that side. I thought, my goodness, I've got to do a talk to actually unite these people. And I felt so nervous to do that thing because they were all white and mixed race, and these were just black over here, and they were separate, and they sat separately. But anyway, during the wake, what we saw at the back, and I asked one of the guys, photograph this. This is wonderful. At the back, while all the adults were sitting, whites over here and blacks over there and mixed race, the young people were at the back, black, white, and mixed race, exchanging telephone numbers and mobile phone numbers. I thought, look at that. They're teaching us. They're teaching us how it should be. And I was so moved by that. And we remember the verse in the Bible, Galatians chapter 3 and verse 28. Under Christ, there is neither Jew nor Greek, nor male, nor female, nor free, nor bond, but we are all one in Christ. Satan is the great divider. Divide and rule is his most powerful weapon. From heaven to Eden, right the way through, he even nearly succeeded in separating Jesus from his Father. Revelation chapter 13 and verse 8 says that the plan of salvation was made from the before the foundation of the world. But you got Christ on the cross saying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Satan nearly succeeded in causing the thing to fail. We've got to remember that. That's his most powerful weapon, and that's how it's going to be in the future, unless we allow God to control, because God will be victorious in the end. So just finally, just some things that have been picked up from this here, things that we could help us, start sharing in church. I mean, to get the culture, we must remember that culture is created by us. Do not let the culture control you. Us. We control the culture, and we must not be led by the culture in the world. We must lead. Too often the church is influenced by the culture in the world, and we tend to bring that on, forgetting that the church was put here to actually show the world a different way. We must, as we've done, look into each other's history, and even if we're serious about this thing, take some time. Africans, go to the Caribbean on holiday. Caribbeans, go to Africa on holiday and really discover something. And as was brought out here today, the similarities, Sadza, Pup and Flaz, Cuckoo in Barbados, what's it called in Jamaica? and Trinidad, sometimes fufu, or just cornmeal and the things that we do with it. It's so similar. The rice is, whether it's rice and peas or jollof rice, stuff. What we should do, have a competition in church one Saturday evening where Africans are going to cook ackee and saltfish, and the Caribbeans are going to cook pup and flaz or something like that. You don't even know what that is. I know what that is. And so do things, make it fun, and the parents must educate the children, but the children, as has been seen here, must educate us as well. It's a two-way thing. And so at the end of this thing, these sisters here, Ruth and Esther, the idea of the banquet, where we all come together, we must look into that, bring the different musics from both groups and the food. And this whole thing inspired by what Alfina has said, the idea of blackicism, as she has said. But one thing we must remember, as we talk about these things, Satan wants to alienate. Let me tell you something that I don't know if I should tell you, but I will tell you. But one of these things that we had here, a white brother out there came and said, oh, here we go, black's at it again. We must not let this what Satan wants to do here now as we are coming together to make us forget there are also white brethren in the church. And what we're doing here must not alienate them either, because we are all together and we've got to show the world that we all came from Adam and we are all one people and we're going to one heaven. So let that be our modus operandi, and let God guide us in this as we move forward. Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Alfina to come up now and do the final part.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, thank you so much to everyone for coming today. You've been brave. You are history makers, trailblazers, all those fancy words. I mean, in the real serious sense, we are making history. We are altering pains, generational cases. These are generational cases that we are shedding off today, one layer at a time, one thing at a time. And thank you so much for everyone who has come and everyone at home. And thankfully to the technology, this video will always be immortalized on YouTube, so people will always visit. And I hope every time people will watch this recording, something will happen. It's simple. We are brothers and sisters, separated at birth violently. We don't hate individuals, we hate the system. We are up against the system, but we are doing something today. And can we be that change as we leave this place? And our children, the legacy, like I said, I have a burden as a mother. Our children, let's impact them positively, and they'll pass on that. Because if we say we are marching to Zion, we really need to alter the way we walk. Let us pray. Our God, our Creator, our Redeemer, our Savior, our ever-present friend, we thank you because you live within us. You created us in your image, after your likeness. So we have a duty to represent you. Every one of us today who is alive, we have the presence of the Holy Spirit. We have the presence of God in each and every one of us. You have written your laws in our hearts. We know what is right, we know what is wrong, as long as we take time to listen, to slow down. We are tired, we are hurting, we are broken, but we don't want to carry on that. We want to shake it off because God is in us. You have said, greater is He who is in us than he who is in the world. Give us the strength to rise. Give us the power to forgive. Give us the energy to heal. Help us to start here as brothers and sisters, to love one another, to understand one another. Yes, Lord, we are hurting, but we know you will do something for us. And I thank you for this space in a mighty way, that we can come together and share our burdens and talk as brothers and sisters. I pray that may the healing begin in each and every one of us. And may we impact on everyone in the community, in our families, in our churches, everywhere we go, in our workplaces. And may we make that where we are a better place. We can do it because all of us has got God in them, because we have said that you created us in our image. Thank you so much. I present this, all your children, all of us to you. Guide us safely as we go back to our homes and help us to overcome whatever challenges we are facing as individuals, as families, as a country, and in this whole world. Thank you so much for looking after us, and continue to guide us in everything. In the mighty name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Oh, the PA team, yes. Thank you for the PA team and those that live stream, Lighter and the panel. It's been really, really, really good. It's been very stimulating and thought-provoking, and the atmosphere has been good, even though some of us have explored and challenged and things we didn't know. And this is what we want. We want us to come together in a healthy way. So I really only came up here to just say the next one did say on the 4th of March, but it's actually now going to be on the 18th of March. So the final, the part 4 will be on the 18th of March at the same time. And then, as Adrian said, we are going to have a ball. So we want people to dress up. We want people to come together. We have got some good entertainment going. We've got some good food from, from the Caribbean, from the African, and even some British as well. You get a little soup or something, right? So no. I want us to really take the 28th of May as a time for us to come together and celebrate our beauty. We, Jabari said about us, we love to celebrate, and Kiki was talking about how we celebrate. So we want to, come together and just be proud of the time that we have spent sharing, exploring, and knowing that we are beautiful people. So I want to thank you all, and I want to just say to you, look out for the poster, and please come along, and I'm just really excited about it, as you can probably tell, because I've got a dress that I want to put on. So if you want to come and see me, then yeah, well, there you go.